Ninja Kamui burst through the scene with their amazing fight scenes, choreography, and animation, even competing with the likes of Solo Leveling, at least for a couple of episodes. But because of those couple episodes, it made Ninja Kamui one of the most popular anime that aired so far this year. Ninja Kamui aired while Solo Leveling was also airing, and naturally, since both had really good fight scenes, the two got compared a lot. And personally, that's how I found out about Ninja Kamui, cause while I was watching Solo Leveling, a lot of people were mentioning that Ninja Kamui had better fight scenes, and I decided to check out Ninja Kamui. And for a few episodes, I was in awe by the amount of hands being thrown, and for a few episodes I found myself agreeing that Ninja Kamui do have better fight scenes than Solo Leveling, but that didn't last long. As after the 4th episode, I was definitely still in awe of the worst, most disappointing series I have ever had displeasure of seeing. I have never felt betrayed and baited by a series ever before. Why, you ask? Oh, I don't even know where to start. First off, the story. At first, I had no problem with the story, as it was very clear in the first few episodes that it's that type of anime that gives you amazing fights and story wouldn't be its focus. Same as stuff like John Wick, retired assassin slash ninja comes back for revenge. And it started off not that bad until they introduced Joseph and Auza. Joseph as a villain is just not it. He's the same as Simon Krieger, also a bad villain, but somehow Joseph is worse. We never really got a real reason as to why he was so determined on progressing technology, and just overall his whole story was just boring.
Boring! Snooze fest!
As shit, and you have to sit through 9 episodes of his boring ass storyline. And his story wasn't just boring, it's also inconsistent. From I think episode 8 onwards, Joseph was trying to get his new reactor be greenlit by the government, but one of the secretary just refused to greenlight it, which makes absolutely no sense since Auza pretty much run the whole world. So first off, why does that one secretary hold so much power? He was outvoted, but Joseph still needed his signature. Second, why is the secretary so adamant on not signing? Because of the risk? When I'm pretty sure he signed off project with equal or even more risk than this reactor, given that the world pretty much runs on Auza tech. Like I said, shit and inconsistent, but Joseph is only one half of the main villains in Ninja Kamui. Yes, this anime has 2 main villains, technically 3, an anime that is pure action. Pretty much every episode had an action scene in it. Decided it would be a smart idea to juggle 2 main villains at the same time, and wouldn't you know,
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Yamaji is also shit. Yamaji isn't as bad as Joseph, but he is also trash. Yamaji's goal made sense. He didn't want the ninjas to disappear because the ninjas acted as a shadow power towards a greater power. So what happens to the ninjas when that greater power didn't exist anymore, or it didn't need the ninjas' power anymore? Yamaji didn't want this to happen, so he made a plan to make the ninjas be the greater power. Yamaji's goal was good, but they still didn't do anything good with it. Yamaji just got up and decided to take over, and everything went his way except the final battle. Also, what happened to Yamaji's power? They introduced that he had a telekinesis type of power, and they built up his eyes for like 9 episodes, and Yamaji didn't even use it in the final fucking fight. Speaking of battle, let's talk about the action. Like I said, the action started off amazing. Then after episode 4, it just went downhill. A lot of people blame the mechs for the lackluster action, and for me, yeah, I agree, but also the mechs aren't the only problem, since even the no mech fight that happened between Higan and Zai didn't look that good. The mech fights did look awful though. The special effects for the mechs ability were horrible. They were too bright. The mechs themselves didn't look good design wise, and they were CGI, and somehow the dimming got worse, even though I feel like the earlier fights had faster movements, and not only that, they were skipping frames so much during the mech fights that it was very noticeable. And finally, let's talk about the non-mech fights. I'll put a side-by-side comparison of the earlier fight sequence compared to the Higan and Zai fight. First off, can I say that the way they got rid of the armor so that they could have a hand-to-hand combat was fucking hilariously bad. The fight itself wasn't that bad. What let this fight down was shockingly the fluidity of it. In most cases, fluidity in action is a good thing, but here it's too smooth. It's so smooth that the impact of the hits got lost in the fluidity, and also the choreography is the only thing that was consistent in this anime. And in this fight, it looks so fucking weird and odd seeing choreography this smooth. I don't know how to describe it. It looks so uncanny looking. Maybe the best way to describe this is it looked like a cutscene from a game. I got that feeling not just from this fight, but pretty much every fight scenes that happened after episode 4, especially that horrible end fight. And I'm not even going to delve much deeper into the catastrophe of the final episode. Everything about it is bad, and I mean everything. Before I leave this video, let me point out things that I did somewhat like. I thought that there was two characters that stood out in Ninja Kamui. First was Emma. Emma was my favorite character in this show, and I felt like this show just completely sabotaged itself when they decided to kill off one of their better characters, especially since this show desperately needed better characters. And by the way, her death episode looked absolutely horrible. Second worst looking episode after the final episode. Second character that stood out was Zai. Zai's backstory episode was my favorite episode of the series, and also Zai actually had some decent dialogue in there. Mari is a funny character. I find it amusing that they pretty much used her character as a plot device. If they needed Mari for something, they used her every single time. Mari affected Higan, Zai, Emma. She even talked to one of the head ninjas that faked his death. Ninja Kamui was this meme materialized. It came, stayed for a second, then headed straight out right after. I just think they abandoned everything that made it work. I don't know how they thought it was a good idea to grab fans with something really good and midway through change everything up. And I've seen people talk about how the animators used the same impact frames from Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1. And I'm not saying that the animators were lazy, but I do think they cut some corners when making Ninja Kamui. Since I've not seen anywhere that the animation team was rushed for this show, I could be completely wrong though. Plus, I also think this show would have been better with a runtime of 6 episodes, or maybe even a movie, because this show just didn't have enough characters or story to grip you for 13 fucking episodes. It just didn't have it. So I think this show would have benefited most by cutting down its runtime. At the end of the day, this show fucking sucks, and I found myself just finishing it just to finish it. And if they're making a sequel, I will not be there no matter what. Leave a like for my suffering, and subscribe for hopefully more positive videos. I think I need to wash my eyes after that shit.